I couldn't believe it when I left outside. It's just so weird when it goes from like so warm and humid yesterday to like this. I like the heat.
Everybody.
John had donated blood today, so I think he's just getting a little nourishment.
That's not acceptable.
He'll be right there.
I can draw enough blood from him.
He's joking, it's not.
I'm like, please don't.
No, he's joking.
I felt bad.
It's hard to tell sometimes when he's joking.
I'm like, no. But
Like,
I think
no, I
it's
just
such a,
ratted him out.
I think it's such a nice thing to do, to donate blood, so it's kind of like good for him, and I think it's like, you know, saves people. So anyways, maybe I will have you take a headshot if you don't think the one that I gave you is any good.
I think that one will work. I got back to the office like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, no, it's okay. No worries.
I think that one will work. We'll see what it looks like.
Is Julie joining us or no?
Yeah, she's on there. I'm just pulling her up right now. She can hear stuff. Yeah.
Want me to text her?
It's Friday. Well, she wasn't here last Friday, but
I
Yeah,
think that was a one-time thing though.
yeah.
let's hope. Hey, Julie,
Yes,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Do you have the opportunity to join us on the morning meetings on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8?
Some of them, yes.
I appreciate it. I would strongly suggest that you do that because it's only going to help you with the understanding of the concepts that we're going over, and we talk about a lot of things that are going on in the world that you ought to know about.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
Awesome. While we're waiting for Jonathan and Madison, and who has questions that I can answer?
She's coming, by the way. I just heard from her.
Really? It started 4 minutes ago.
Maybe she's confused and thinks it's 2 to 4. I just texted her 1 to 3.
Okay. No problem. Julie, any questions we can answer for you right off?
Not right off. I'm sure as we go through, I'll have a few more questions, but not right off.
Okay. Jessica?
Not the moment. Oh, it's exactly what I thought. She said, I thought it was 2 to 4.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
so I'll
Sorry,
say-
but I might have come back from giving blood in Boston.
Why'd you have to go to Boston to get blood?
Because my old company, Big Night Entertainment Group, does it at Big Night Live, so I wanted to support them. You know.
Of course.
Really?
Yeah.
People have passion fruit?
Yeah.
That's really good.
If you want to draw blood, I can certainly draw blood for you.
Hey, next time, I gotta wait 8 weeks, but I'll let you
No
off.
problem.
Did you-
Mariah, questions?
Well, this,
About anything?
no, I just was going over, there's not a lot of, there's no really commercial, unless it's for more of list like residential, right, not commercial.
Does both.
But there are also specific commercial MLS-like products out there that we also use.
Okay.
What are you trying to find, or what are you trying to do?
I met with, one of my old bosses, colleagues, I guess, and they're looking for a commercial space in Seaport or the Financial District to open up it would be a retail location for like a med spa IV thing.
Okay.
So they told me that they're gonna be looking for spots.
Mm-hmm. And how much space are they looking for?
I didn't get into the details of it just yet.
Okay, and how much is their budget? And
I know, I just was curious, like.
Yeah.
When I get more of the information.
Mhm.
Um,
so commercials is, while it's the same, Luciano will tell you, because he's certainly seen it, it's a whole different animal when you're dealing with the,
I figured,
especially when you're dealing in Boston, they start seeing a residential company coming down into Boston. I'll tell you one of my first experiences. Now I have gone through the CCIM classwork, which is 5 or 6 weeks of 40 hours of classes, an exam at each end. It's basically a master's degree in commercial real estate.
yeah,
And as I called for one of my clients that was looking for a $5 million property, and this was 20 years ago, it took me, might be off by a couple of calls, but it took me 37 calls to get the listing broker on the line. And then when I got him on the line, I asked him why he didn't return my call. He goes, well, you're a residential agent, you have no idea what you're doing.
yeah,
I said, well, that's great. I said, are you familiar with CCIM? He said, yes, sir. I said, are you a CCIM? He says, no, I'm not. I don't have the time to take the classes, but I'd like to. I said, great. Well, I've taken all the courses, and both of my bosses are CCIMs. And in fact, between our two offices, because Bob was living in Michigan, we've got 60 CCIMs. So do you want to talk about cap rates? Do you want to talk about, what is it that you'd like to talk about and you think that I don't know, which is the reason why you didn't answer my call?
Yeah.
He said, well, is that supposed to impress me? He said, here's what I'm prepared to do. I'm prepared to call your seller and let them know that you're failing to represent them because I have a cash buyer for your $5 million property. And your reluctance to return my call because you think I don't know what I'm doing is costing your seller a sale. So which would you prefer? Do you want to have a conversation with me, or do you want me to have a conversation with your seller?
Okay.
So I'm just telling you, there are things, it's a different world when you're dealing with the Colliers of the world, any of the different big CRBE, some of the big commercial brokers that are going to be downtown. They're going to give you a lot of attitude. So you just want to know what you're dealing with and what you're talking about. So when you go to re-engage this particular associate or colleague of your friend, then let us know, and
yeah, I'll get.
Bob or
more
I or
information and
Tyler or
updates,
somebody
yes.
can, we'll do it with you so you learn how to do it. That's the goal, right? It's not for us to do it for you. The goal is for us to do it with you so you learn and you benefit from it.
Okay.
Right? And that's always going to be the case, whether it's your first listing appointment, your first buyer appointment, whatever it is, we want you to kind of mirror and match what we're doing and participate in that so that you can learn what to do.
Okay.
Us doing it for you does great for the first deal, but how does that help you, learn and be able to provide for yourself later on?
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay.
Luke, any questions?
No.
Okay, so when we last met, and so just for the parameters of today, two scheduling issues. I've got some showings. I have to be in Westford by 3:15, so I'm going to cut the class short at 2:30. Since it's Friday and might as well enjoy the weekend, right?
That's today.
Today at 2:30, I'm going
Yeah,
to
okay, no problem.
kind of cut us down. And then we don't have Bernice Ross on Monday, so I'm okay with picking up and doing, we're going to do Tuesday, right? Keep getting her confused. So next week, let's talk about next week's schedule. Are we good to keep what we did
2 to 4.
2 to 4 Tuesday and Wednesday and 1 to 3 on Friday? Yes, yes, yes,
What's
yes. Let me just double check that. Julie, yes, does that work for you?
Yeah, she said that.
Okay,
I was thinking my phone.
Julie, you're on mute.
you're on mute.
We got the idea.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
Doesn't matter.
Say that again?
Wednesday,
Oh,
so
that's the-
Zillow Partner Development.
Yeah, we'll participate in that, but that's not next week, right?
It's the 20th.
It's the
Okay, so it's
23rd.
late, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Got it. Okay,
That's next week, so I'm just making sure that I'm good to go.
so same schedule for next week then.
Yeah, so if everybody's good for that, Tuesday, 2 to 4, Wednesday, 2 to 4, Friday, 1 to 3, I'll send an invitation out.
Thank you, perfect.
No problem. Okay. All right, so last we spoke, now the scheduling stuff's out of the way, we spoke about this thing called the exclusive right to buy agreement. We talked about that this is a contract. And Julie, do you remember what kind of contract it was?
An exclusive contract?
It is an exclusive contract, not the answer I was looking for, but certainly an accurate answer. Jessica?
Buyer contract?
It is a buyer contract, again, not the answer I was looking for, but an accurate answer nonetheless.
It is the most important thing to have someone sign.
Without a
Legal
doubt.
binding?
It is legal binding, because all contracts once signed are legal binding. Jonathan?
Yeah, I was gonna say something probably along the line of them, so, besides the full title.
Okay. Mariah, do you remember?
I don't, was trying to look.
I know, I
Service
raised the board
contract?
so you couldn't cheat.
Oh,
What's that?
Service contract?
Bingo, there's the answer. You get the gold star for the day. So it's a service contract. Luce, what's a service contract?
Service in exchange for something
A
else.
fee.
Yeah, is there always a fee or could you guys?
In theory, you could do some type of barter arrangement, and it would still be a contract, service contract, if somebody was providing a service for something, for an in-kind fill in blank. But yeah, it's a service for fee contracts. And why do we do these? Why would we want to do these?
So we're guaranteed payment for our time?
Okay, I like the answer, don't love the answer. And I say like because nothing's guaranteed. It is possible that you could have an exclusive with somebody and still not get paid,
Mhm.
of course. And I'll give you an example that happened last week. So Xiaoming had an exclusive right to buy agreement with a buyer. The seller was only offering 2.5%. His agreement was 3%. They got to the closing, even though we provided all the documentation, we had the signed contract, the buyers have now refused to pay. So I've sent them 2 emails letting them know that I'm demanding the fee. And next Monday, they'll get a letter from my attorney or our attorney saying, Eric wasn't kidding. So either you'll pay one way or the other. You're either gonna pay by use of hiring your attorney, at which point you'll be paying attorney's fees, and then when you lose, because you will, because we've won in court before, then you'll also owe us the fee plus interest and damages and so on and so forth. Or you can just pay us now and be done with it. So not what I like to do for our clients, but don't play ignorant with me and say, I didn't know what I signed. You signed it, you read it, you've been through this. This is why we train you. This is why we train everybody the same. This is why you will follow the procedure every single time, because that way I have a leg to stand on when somebody decides not to honor the contract that they've entered into. Make sense?
So that reminds me of a question I've been wanting
Great.
to ask. I'm not sure if it was the day you were mostly out of the office in New Hampshire or not.
Okay.
But in one of our meetings, Tyler went through, oh, you were on the phone. And Tyler went through
After
this
me.
with his like presentation, mock presentation with Bob.
Yep.
And
I did not get, I lost signal once you started going. I heard your first portion of it. And
okay. So basically the part I had a question about was when he talked about the fee.
Yeah.
Bob said, as the possible buyer, am I gonna have to pay you anything? And Tyler said, no, because whatever fee we agree on, if there's a difference, we'll request it from the seller. So there'll be no out-of-pocket cost to you.
that's true, but what happens if the seller refuses the request and says no?
Right, so he's saying that they would request an additional like closing cost fee, is that what it would be?
There's a couple ways to do it, right? The way that you're gonna justify your fee is what? By the level of service that you provide, by the market knowledge and negotiating skill that you have. So using that market knowledge and negotiating skill, you either get an improvement on the price, which is obviously hard to do in today's market when everything is going over asking price. You will be able to figure out some type of in-kind value, whether it's you're negotiating additional things into the agreement that otherwise would not have been there. One of them could be that you're asking for a closing cost credit of a percentage amount or a dollar amount to help offset that fee. But that's all it does, is it offsets. It doesn't negate the fact that the buyer is either going to have to wrap it into their loan or pull it out of their pocket. But if you're, for example, if they owe 0.5%, so fees for the contracts for 2.5 and the selling office, the listing office is only offering 2.0, the buyer is going to owe 0.5%. So you do what you do best and you negotiate that the buyer is going to give the seller is going to give the buyer a 0.5% credit towards closing costs and prepaids. All you've done is offset the fee. It's not a replacement of the fee. And why is it an offset? Because the seller's not writing a check to the buyer for that amount or writing a check to us for that amount. What the seller's doing is, on paper at the closing, is giving a credit for that amount, for which the buyer still has to dig into their pocket and pay you the fee.
But they're paying like that amount less for the house.
No, not if it's a credit. They're paying the full amount for the house that was negotiated, and the seller's taking part of the pile of money that they're being given at closing, and they're giving a credit back. So essentially the seller is giving back that money, but the buyer can't take it as a check and can't take it as cash, but they're going to take it against the credit. They're going to take it against some closing costs that they would otherwise have to pull out of their pocket. Right? So you're lessening the amount that they're going to have to pull out of their pocket for closing costs, but they're still going to have to pull it out of their pocket to pay you. So I want to be as clear as a bell for your clients, and you need to be clear as a bell for your clients as to how that's going to work and when that happens, and explain it again when it happens, so that when we get to the closing, they don't go, I didn't know what I was signing. Because if they've done that, then you have not explained it, in my humble opinion.
So is it a little risky to word it the way he did?
I would think so. Good thing I wasn't on the phone.
Madison just texted me, she said that she thought it was at 2.
Yep.
So I'm gonna send her the Zoom link real quick.
Yes.
So I think maybe it's a good point to bring up that that's a possibility that we may be able to negotiate that in, but
Right.
further explain that.
Right,
if
and
not,
I'm gonna go through how to do this once we've gone through every line of this agreement, and then I can give you, just as I did with the Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensing Consumer Relationship Disclosure Form, I'll give you how to present this in 10 minutes or less, or whatever the time frame is, and give you some suggested language. I generally say it's something like this. Listen, you don't work for free, I don't work for free. Oftentimes, so when you sign this agreement, you're agreeing to pay me for the job you're hiring me to do. Is that fair and reasonable? Of course, right? We're getting them to agree on that. The great news for you is that oftentimes, and in most times, the seller or the listing agent are offering compensation to me, or my firm really, that we can use to offset your obligation. So it's possible that you won't owe me a fee. And wouldn't that be terrific that you get my services without taking a penny out of your pocket? It is possible that the seller only offers part of the fee. So let's say the seller only offers 2, I'm charging you 2.5. You're gonna have to pay me 0.5%. Isn't that still better than paying me a full fee and still getting the full range of services that you're gonna get from me and me working for you? How great is it that somebody else is gonna at least partially offset, if not pay my whole fee? Remember what my job description is as your agent, as your buyer's agent. It is to do the following. 1, to negotiate in your best interest. 2, to negotiate the lowest possible price with the best possible terms and conditions, to make sure that you're taking the least amount of money out of your pocket, including my fee. Would you be okay paying part of my fee if the seller pays a good chunk of it? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, how is that for an explanation? Okay, that's what I want you to be able to say. Because if you say my fee is 3%, the buyer goes, well, I've never heard of any buyer paying a fee. Okay, where'd you hear it from? And let's talk about that experience and why. Okay, it's possible that you may not have to pay my fee. But I'm not willing, if you're not willing to hire me and make me be your exclusive agent, and not willing to pay me if I do the job, what's the point of me working for you? Jonathan, what do you do for a living?
A nightlife manager.
And what exactly is a nightlife manager? I'm not familiar with the term because I'm old and gray.
We manage the operations and VIP services of nightclubs.
Okay, so do you get paid at the end of every week or every other week?
I do.
Okay, because are you getting a salary?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're getting paid a salary every other week. I'm not getting paid anything by anybody. The only way I get paid is if I do the job you hired me to do and you actually get to closing. Okay, so that's why I put a contract in place, is to make sure that when you hire me, there's an understanding that I have to get paid. The other reality is that you don't wait till the end of all of your work to get paid, right? You don't wait till the end of the year and then you get paid. You get paid on a regular basis. I don't. I only get paid when we get to closing. That could be a month. It could be 12 months. But the bottom line is I'm not getting paid throughout this transaction. So do you understand why I'm asking you to hire me?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it really good news that we might be able to get somebody paid most of, if not all of the fee that you're signing and obligating yourself to? Okay. So those are the types of objections you're going to get. You're going to have to be comfortable with responding to. Okay. Questions? All right. So it's a service contract. Question?
Actually, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Talking to this for sale by owner that I've been trying to work on,
Okay.
I was just wondering if they ever offer a fee, for sale by owners ever offer a fee.
I don't know. You got to ask them.
If they're
Oh, no,
smart,
I
they
know.
do.
What?
If they're smart, they do.
Well, yeah, because I just meant in practice in general. Like, how often do they?
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of them are smart enough to know that they're saving part of the fee, not an entire fee.
Mhm.
And that it's in their best interest. It's in their best interest to offer a fee because they're going to get a better response, right?
Mhm.
If you're if you're for sale by owner and you tell me as an agent that you're not offering compensation, I'm going to go back to my buyer and do what?
Let them know.
Tell them they're gonna owe you the full commission.
Correct. And that may influence them to say, what? I don't want to see the house.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not my job to tell them we shouldn't go see that house because they're not offering compensation, but it is my job to say, listen, I'm happy to take you to, if this is your forever house, if you think that's it, I'm gonna take you there and we're gonna get this done for you. But you have to understand that seller isn't offering any compensation, which means you're gonna have to pay my fee. I had that happen. The first buyer client that I had, I found him for sale by owner for.
Mhm.
The conversation went something like this. Hey, you see that house over there that you liked or that I've actually found for you based on what you're looking for? It's a for sale by owner. They're selling it without the assistance of an agent. They are also, in my speaking with them, said that they're not going to pay a fee and pay the fee. And remember, you owe me 3%. They said, okay. I said, what I can do is I can ask them again. When we write the offer, we can formally ask them in the offer to pay the fee. Okay. But they may still refuse to, or they may pay part of it. The bottom line is the worst case scenario is you get this offer accepted, they refuse to pay the fee, you're gonna have to pay me that fee outside of closing. Hi Madison, how are you?
Frozen.
Frozen, you're frozen. Warm up and let us know.
But if you submit an offer with,
So what ended up happening was in that we submitted the offer, we asked the owner to pay the fee. They said, all right, well, we'll agree to pay the fee. Pay 2 of the 3 points. So we get to closing, my buyer had to bring 1%. After the closing, I sat with the buyers and said, okay, so what do you think? You know, how'd I do? Did I do better otherwise? He goes, that 1% was the best money I ever spent. And if I had to pay you 3% because the seller didn't, it was still great because you were able to negotiate this and do this and you found this. And so it has, the fee that you're owed has everything to do with the service you're going to provide. And the objection of paying the fee is going to come when you don't explain it properly up front and you don't provide the service you are obligated to provide. In my humble opinion. You had another question.
I actually do not have a question.
Madison, how are you?
So sorry. I'm so sorry. I was like, I beating myself
here.
up on it. I'm like 1 o'clock and then it was 2 o'clock. I'm sorry. anyways, go
We're
on.
here now. So did you have any immediate questions? We're just kind of jumping back in, and we're gonna end at 2:30, by the way. So we've got an
Okay.
hour.
Oh, so good. Okay. Immediate questions, were you guys just talking about the buyer's contract?
We were starting to, yeah.
Okay, then no questions on that so far.
Okay, all right. So, so it's an exclusive agreement. We started going through it. The first paragraph, the unnumbered paragraph there, has everything to do with just making sure that the people that sign this know that this contract is going to be in full force and effect in the states within which the company is licensed. So even though you're not licensed in New Hampshire, as I look around the room, because none of you are, this contract is still valid for anybody that you sign up, even if they're looking in Massachusetts. Not only is it valid there, if they decide to go to New Hampshire, it's valid there. So don't let them run off to New Hampshire or let them think that we can't help them in New Hampshire, because if they go and buy a house in New Hampshire without you or without us, guess what? The big bad manager is going to go after them for the fee that they owe us. Okay? Again, that is not my preference. I am not here, I don't like to enforce these contracts, but I will. Okay? Because it's a matter of you making a living and us making a living. Okay? Paragraph 1, the services paragraph. What's that paragraph all about? Who wants to take a stab at it? Because I know you guys all read this and memorized it. Luch?
It's basically just saying what we're gonna provide to them.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll work in their best interest. And it says fiduciary again, but most likely you just went over this, so you can just remind them.
Right. So I usually describe this paragraph, right, it's just a reiteration of what a buyer's agent is. It's not really the description, the full description of the services that we're going to provide, all right? Remember that. That's really, really important. It's just a reiteration of what a buyer's agent is, which is somebody who represents them in a transaction. So that means that's why they call it what? Agency. And because you're being hired, you are creating a fiduciary. And because there's a fiduciary, that means you represent the buyer. And because there is a fiduciary, you are now obligated to provide all 6 elements of fiduciary represented in the acronym OLD CAR. I won't beat you up for that. I think you guys kind of have that down. Okay. Paragraph 2. Madison, what does paragraph 2 tell us?
The duration of agency, so it says how long it'll last.
Right. And who's read the manual? So the 2 of you, the 3 of you, I don't know if you've read it recently. The 3 of you have read the standard contract length for a buyer agency, exclusive buyer agency agreement.
Is it 6 months?
I don't know. Is it 6 months, Jonathan?
Yeah.
You're sure about that? Mariah, do you agree?
Yes.
You do. Good. You're all ready. Awesome.
Yay.
Okay, so 6-month agreement. Okay. Do not get into the habit of shortening that.
I was gonna say, are they, some people are gonna be like, oh, can we make it like 3 since it's exclusive? I'm
So great. Why do you want to make it 3, Jessica?
well, I wanna see what you're capable of, to know that I wanna be with you for that long.
Okay. So is it a function of knowing what I'm capable of? I find that the length of the contract is more in keeping with what's going on in the marketplace versus what you're looking at me.
Oh, I heard things are selling so fast though.
Well, they are. So can you imagine the fact that some of my clients have written 9 and 10 offers? Do you think I'm writing 9 and 10 offers in, over the course of 3 months? I might be. That's a lot of houses that we've seen, right? So the length of the contract is commensurate to what's going on in the marketplace. And if we are in a down market where there's lots of inventory, you're still going to say the same thing. That's our standard contract length. Could you negotiate something else? You could. But as soon as that's signed and you send in a copy, which is what your obligation is, you're probably going to get a call from the big bad manager saying, any reason why you did a 3-day contract
What about like
or a 3-month contract?
or a year? What if they want to lengthen it?
You can certainly do it as long as you want. I'm never gonna bark at a longer contract.
Okay.
I am gonna bark at a contract that's less. Now, have I used less than 6 months? I have. Have I had somebody that I've sat in this conference room or at this table and gone through the whole agency and gone through exclusive right to buy and done the whole buyer consult thing, and they say, I'm like, you know, I'm a little uncomfortable signing this, then I might give them an invitation and say, you know what, let's sign it for 30 days and you tell me whether or not, and then you can evaluate whether I'm providing the service I said I was. And if it is, then we're gonna renew it for 6 months. And if it's not, then we're just gonna part ways. Okay, not what I like to do, but it's a fallback because I'd rather have you sign the agreement than not sign it at all, because I'm convinced once you sign the agreement with somebody and you provide the level of service that you're going to be trained to provide, they'll have no problem upping it again unless you're absolutely not doing what you were taught.
Okay.
Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Paragraph 3, buyer's obligation. Here's how I'd like to do that. We're going to round robin this, and you'll notice that it's broken down into subparagraphs, A through I believe it is, if I remember correctly. And I want you to take the first one, and so Julie, you'll take A, Madison, you'll take B, and Jessica and Jonathan and Mariah and Luciano. We'll just keep cycling. But what I want you to do is read through the bullet point, and then once you're done, I want you to tell me what you think it means, and so that we can discuss it. So, Julie, you're on deck. You get the extra beginning sentences as well, and read it through and including bullet point A.
Okay,
Please.
but buyer's obligations. A buyer agrees to A, refer all potentially acceptable real property to broker during the term of this agreement.
Okay, what does that mean to you?
So what that means is, even if like another agent or a friend or someone, anyone that gives you a property that to look at, you're referring it back to the broker, your agent that you
The
signed
buyer's
up with.
referring it back to you.
Yes.
Okay.
They're not taking it on their own. They're not taking it with someone else. They're taking it directly with you, any and all real property.
And why should they do that?
Because if they go with someone else, number one, they're going to be violating the contract if they signed it and the agreement. And number two, you're their agent, you're acting in their best interest. So if they go and do something and then tell them one of their, time, motivation, or value, then they kind of screwed themselves, for lack of a better term.
All good points. The other issue here is that oftentimes what people justify you as a buyer agent is that it's your job to find them the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually use this paragraph in terms of the buyer's obligation that, hey, recognize that when you get into a contract, a bilateral contract, it means you have obligations and I have obligations. Your obligations, for the most part, are to yourself. And one of those obligations is, and one of the things that we're going to do in terms of this partnership that we're creating here through this contract, is that you might be driving down a street that I don't drive down on a regular basis on my way home or as I'm out and about, and you might find a for sale by owner. Don't call it for sale by owner, get the number and call me, okay? It is not possible for me to see and know every single property that is on the market for sale. It's just not possible. Even with MLS, which I look at and see every single day. So you're going to be put on this MLS feed based on the parameters we'll define in the next segment of our discussion. And it's your job to look at that online and identify any properties that are of interest to you and start that process. And I'll tell you how we work in a few minutes in terms of doing that, and recognize that I'm also going to be looking at what you're looking at every day. Sometimes I might beat you to the punch and say, hey, did you see this? Okay, so that's a passive way for me to make sure that you're getting stuff. But again, you might drive by something that may be of interest. Guess what? We may employ, depending on if we're struggling to find something, we may employ the tactic where I'm actually going out and knocking on doors.
I was gonna ask if they can do that.
Of course you can.
Okay, so I wanna do that
Okay, you will.
as another,
It's a little challenging in the COVID environment, but we'll get there when we get there. So,
okay.
but you have to frame this as being a partnership, because if you don't, then what's going to happen is they're going to get to closing, forgot that they signed this, and say, well, I found the property, Eric. I found that for sale by owner on 123 Main Street. You didn't find it for me. You didn't do your job. You're right. I didn't do my job by explaining to you that it's a partnership. It's not just about me. You didn't hire me just to find you the property. I set you up on my daily email. We talked about what you were looking for. We talked about it being a partnership. And look at all this other stuff that I've done for you. Make sense?
A good analogy, actually,
Yeah,
Rashad, is that it's like, would you hire an attorney? If, say you hired an attorney for something, would you, if you found a piece of evidence that would help you, are you then gonna present that evidence to the other person, or are you gonna give it to your attorney? So you
Great
would
point.
give it right to your attorney that you hired to do the job?
So if we were to explain this in like one sentence, we'd say, recognize you're obligated to find the house for them, but like.
It's a partnership.
Partnership.
It's a partnership. We're both going to be out looking for houses. If you see something that you think I haven't seen, let me know. If I see something I think you haven't seen, I'll let you know. Okay? The contract isn't about me finding you the house. The contract is about us finding it together and me helping you along the process. Many times it will be a function of you getting the email from me, but as you know, there are literally hundreds of sources to go see houses, including driving by properties, okay, and knocking on doors and doing all kinds of things. Madison, what's bullet point B say? Read that aloud and tell me what your thoughts are on it.
Okay. Only work with the broker or broker's agency identified in this agreement and not with any other real estate broker or licensee in identifying, previewing, and seeing property for purchase by buyer.
What does that mean?
So that's basically telling your buyer that they're not allowed to work with any other broker or licensee. So me, you can't work with anyone else that's a real estate agent.
So if I'm your agent, that means Luciano can't help you?
Well, we're a part of a designated agency, so technically he could help you, but it's just outside of any brokerage.
Right idea, wrong terminology.
Okay.
So what's the
wrong.
terminology you got wrong? Do you know? Are we a designated or a non-designated agency?
Oh, okay. Non-designated agency.
Which means what?
That when you hire me, you hire all of us. So Luch would be a part of that.
Okay, so that's worded right in that sentence, is it not? It says by the broker or broker's agency, right?
Yeah.
So remember, the agreement is always with the company, and with you'll be their agent, but I have the same fiduciary to that buyer that you're going to have. And so in theory, there's no issue with me stunt doubling for you because you're away for the weekend. But again, you don't want that to be, whenever you get in that situation, it to be proactive. I should never be getting a call on a weekend saying, hey, you know, I'm working with Madison and she's away for the weekend and I'm not sure who to call, right? It needs to be, hey, Eric, I know Madison introduced us because she's away this weekend. Can you help me with, because she's out? Sure, of course I can. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Jessica C.
Sure. Notify all other real estate agents who communicate with buyer or broker's exclusive agency relationship with buyer. So it's if another maybe real estate agent tries to approach them, they say, I'm working with Jessica on this transaction.
Okay, where is that most likely to happen? In what situation?
Open house.
Exactly right.
Open house? Okay.
Right? Now, is it possible that it could happen in a social setting?
Sure.
Sure.
It probably happens early, but you know,
Right.
if someone knows you're in the
Right.
market,
And for
your
the,
friends, whatever.
and for those of you that have actually hosted open houses, you know that one of the key questions that you ask within the first 5 minutes of meeting somebody is what? Luch?
You working with an agent?
Okay, are you working with another agent? And if it's yes, then you can further, if you so deem it, you can further qualify by saying, are you working exclusively with that agent?
Do you ever see it like open, you know, on the test, they have all different types of agencies, not, it wasn't on here, but like open
Mm-hmm.
agency and stuff like that. Do you see that often?
Nope.
It was on the test a lot, or studying.
Right, but you are gonna run it, counter people, so I did it. Here's a perfect example for it. So I held an open house
Mhm.
for Lillian's 55 Grouse Run up in Pelham, New Hampshire. People came in, I had 6 buyers come through. I asked everybody that same question. 4 of the 6 buyers had agents,
Okay.
okay? I followed up with all of them and or their agents. I got a stray call the next day saying, hey, I met you at the open house. We didn't realize that we want to make an offer and we didn't realize that our broker is only licensed in Massachusetts. Okay, no problem. Can I help you? Of course I can. Do you have an exclusive arrangement with that broker? I do not. Okay. So I could therefore help them without, because I certainly don't want to endanger them by having them to have to pay somebody else a fee.
Right, of course. Yeah.
I had a question about that earlier. So if they're working with a broker that's only licensed in Mass, and they decide to buy a place in New Hampshire, do they still have to pay a fee to?
I don't know. What does their agreement say? Is there an agreement? And what does the agreement say?
Well, because you said, you asked them, are they exclusive? And
Mhm.
they said no.
Yeah.
But for example, from this perspective, if we were working with someone looking in Mass and New Hampshire, and this is exclusive, obviously,
Mhm.
and they say, actually, you decide we're gonna move to New Jersey. Well, I can't say, well, you have to work with me in New Jersey because I'm not licensed, so to,
And it's a hell of a commute to go show them property.
yeah. So in that case, would this just kind of run out in 6 months?
Yeah, I would, if they made that, I would say once they've moved or gone down there, two things. One, I would get a referral to a New Jersey agent, so I get something out of the deal, right? And then I would void the contract at some point. Once I know for sure that they're going to New Jersey and not looking in New Hampshire or Massachusetts.
Okay, so if someone else was exclusive and you were at open house in New Hampshire, they were exclusive with someone in Mass, same thing, they could work with you because they can't work with their broker.
Correct. All right.
In that situation, would they sign this or would this have to be altered? Because technically this would be applicable to Mass as well.
This is applicable to Mass and New Hampshire, so I'm not sure I understand the question, sorry.
Well, so if they already have a contract with somebody in Mass,
Yep.
even though we're allowed to work with them in New Hampshire and have a contract in New Hampshire, because this also covers Mass, would that conflict with their other one, or that's more of a?
It would, so it would be something you'd have to clarify. The qualifying question in that situation is, all right, you have an exclusive, the answer is yes. Does the exclusive include New Hampshire or not include New Hampshire? If it doesn't include New Hampshire, then you can sign this, but alter it to reflect New Hampshire only, so it doesn't conflict.
Right.
Or, because you can't technically solicit somebody else's client, right? So you'd have to just make sure that you're not trying to solicit the Massachusetts side of it as well, where they already have an agreement in place. That's what's called tortious interference with a contract, not a good thing.
So would the best bet be for the New Hampshire side, to tell them to try to cancel their contract with their New
That would
Hampshire
be,
contract?
you're enticing them to break a contract, so no, that would be interference with a contract.
What if you were to contact their agent and say to their agent, hey, this person, wants to buy New Hampshire, but you're not licensed there?
And
Would you mind?
if somebody did that to me, I'd say, oh, okay, great, so you're paying me a referral fee?
Well, I mean, that's not required though, right?
Well, why do you want to open yourself up to that whole conversation?
Yeah, I
No
suppose.
business for you to call the other agent. It's really, I would certainly want to do everything on our end to make sure that we're not having somebody sign something that puts them in some type of legal or financial jeopardy because they may or may not understand the terminology of and or what they've signed previously, right? Because I can assure you, very few companies do what we do, which is to train you on every word of this contract and encourage you to remain current on this contract so that you can explain it and, right? Because the number of times that we've ever had to go after buyers for not paying the contract, I can count it on one hand. Who's Booch? The dog is barking.
Oh, sorry, that was mine.
Oh, I'm so sorry. How do I mute? I'll mute it.
No problem. All right, so that was C. Let's go to Jonathan D.
Be available to meet with broker to see property.
Kind of an important thing, huh?
Yeah.
You got the hardest one.
Guess you got me too.
Okay, so is it possible, Jonathan, for the buyer to buy a house without seeing a house?
According to this, it wouldn't be what type of relationship we're looking to have, but I suppose if someone was working remotely and they're okay with virtual tours, not that that may be something that we want to do, but if it was, would that be allowed? I guess that does answer your question. The question which probably is not good, but.
So what's the answer to the question?
First
The first question.
I guess if this, unless we alter this to reflect that, then they would have to be available to see in
No, so this is saying you need to be available, it doesn't require them to be available. So I had a client 15 years ago that was relocating in from, of all places, Andover, Minnesota. So he and his wife came in, he was being relocated in from a company that I had done some work for before, and I was doing a lot of relocation work. They came in, I took them around and showed them properties. They weren't ready to make an offer. Things started heating up in terms of when he needed to be out here. So I started looking, this is long before this was before the invention of these fun things where you can do FaceTime and walkthrough and things like that. So I literally took my video camera and did a video walkthrough and uploaded it to the internet. Probably took like an hour and a half. And they downloaded, looked at it, and they made an offer sight unseen and bought a house. Now, the way we wrote the offer was very specific because we wanted the seller to be aware that the buyer had not seen the property, in all fairness to the seller, and that the buyer reserved the right no later than the time of home inspection to be able to walk away as a result of that. And it was a bit of a different market. You would not get away with that in today's market, right? You will get away with something like that in a little bit more of a balanced market or a market that's a little bit more geared towards buyer. But he literally bought a house because he saw it on the video that I took for him. Okay, so the answer is they need to make themselves available, but it's also based on their circumstances. And there will be times when you're working with people that are out of state where you're doing these types of virtual walkthroughs. I mean, virtual walkthroughs now are pretty commonplace.
Yeah.
Back then it was totally unheard of. Okay, how many houses have we sold in the 10,000 houses we've sold over 20 years? Probably 3 or 4.
It happens more often too with Phillips Academy right up there.
Yeah.
It's like all the families overseas that literally buy houses for their kids to just stay out to go to school or.
That's nice.
I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah.
I think when my grandmother lived in Brookline, and she sold her condo like 96 a couple years ago. And someone from China bought it, and I don't think they ever saw it. I just think they wanted to invest.
They were nice people.
They just bought it, yeah.
We've done that. Again, we
Yeah.
have had a number of buyers that have done that.
Yeah. It happens, but
I'm wondering if I may be doing some virtual showings. I'm still trying to get my mom's uncle from Texas who's moving up here to sign.
Okay.
So that would be interesting.
Mariah E.
Provide broker with accurate information as requested by broker, including financial information about buyer's financial ability to complete the transaction and written authorization to obtain verification of funds. It's basically saying that the buyer will agree to basically be pre-approved and make sure that they can afford the house they're looking at.
They're basically agreeing that they're going to document that they can do what they say they're going to do.
Okay.
Right? Because Bob will tell you a story, and it's probably due to come up because it comes up every other year or whatever. But I don't know. I don't think it was him, but one of the agents in his office was working with a buyer and showed him some ungodly amount of property, like 100 homes, predicated on the fact that they were looking for a home and they were serious, and so showed him whatever this number of homes were, 50, 100, doesn't really matter. And then when they went to make the offer, they found out that not only were they not pre-approved, they had a bankruptcy and couldn't even get.
isn't the one he just shared?
Oh, he might have.
This place
Yeah.
where
Is that this one,
Do you
Jen?
have them on
Yeah.
rotation?
he didn't have a basement in his place in Michigan or something.
Yep, that's the one.
And
Yeah.
then like 200,
176 homes.
Yep.
so-
Yeah.
200, yeah.
The number changes every
We-
year.
we
You
heard
didn't hear
that.
that from me, but okay.
There's a lot.
So, but that's the point, right?
Yeah.
And that's, we're going to teach you that with rare exception, you shouldn't be going out, taking buyers out to see properties. One, it's a terrible environment because you go out and see a buyer show a property, they love the house, they want to make an offer, and there's no pre-approval. One, they're probably not going to get the property because they can't act quick enough, even if they can afford it. And two, boy, how's that buyer going to feel when they go to make an offer and, it's a $500,000 property, but they're pre-approved, they can only get a pre-approval for $300,000.
Right.
You're setting up expectations. So it is our job to make sure, and from an efficiency perspective, it makes much better sense for you to not take buyers out that haven't been pre-approved. And I'll even go as far to say not pre-approved by guaranteed rate. Okay, because there's plenty of examples this year alone where several of them with Citizens Bank where they've been pre-approved for an amount, and then we had them cross-referenced by guaranteed rate. 1 or 2 of them couldn't afford a house at all, And the others were for a lot less money than what they were told by a different bank. So the quality of the bank also determines it, but that's what that means, is basically they're agreeing to tell you that they're pre-approved and prove that they're pre-approved. Okay, Luch, next. I think it's F.
Inspect and otherwise become familiar with any potential adverse conditions relating to the physical condition of any property in which buyer becomes interested, and improvements located on such property in the area surround such property.
Okay, what does that all mean?
Basically means that the buyer has to do their own due diligence to,
I thought it was your job to tell me everything about the property.
yeah, that they're required to do their own due diligence.
Okay, but I thought there was this thing called caveat emptor. Who remembers what that was from class?
Buyer beware.
Buyer beware. Does that exist? Julie, does caveat emptor exist in today's world?
I think it always does. I mean, buyer needs to be aware. You want to make sure that you're up to date with everything, because the broker is only going to tell you exactly what they know about the property, like you said, and everything they know, but they're not experts, so they can't tell you anything about surrounding areas if something's going up here and there. It's not your job to do that investigation. It's just your job to know what's on the property.
Wait a second, you're working for me. Luch, you're working for me. Why isn't it your job to go figure out what's going on down the street? You're the real estate guy.
Yeah, related to the property, related to the real property.
Okay, what down the street is real property, isn't it? Last I checked.
It's not the specific property that we're talking about though.
Okay, so whose job is it?
It's the buyers.
It's kind of skeptical.
All right, so you're telling me I gotta go do my own stuff? Well, why do I need to pay you 3% then?
For all the other reasons to negotiate and all that.
Okay. But I thought you had a requirement under licensing law to tell me everything you know about the property.
Yeah, but in the event that I don't find something, then. Yeah.
Well, it's possible that you don't know everything about the property, right?
Yeah.
It's possible that you might have to ask to get information about the property. And so, but the law is specific to the property and everything inside the bounds of the property that you know of. The law doesn't say that you as licensees have the obligation to go inspect and find things out.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's good for you to know that. Mr. Buyer, it's important for you to know, I liked your way that you worded it, Luch, that you have an obligation to do your own due diligence, but it's not buyer beware. If you don't do it, that doesn't mean that you should have done it, but with all due respect, you're gonna go spend $500,000. You need to put a little effort in, make sure that you know what you're buying. So you do have a responsibility to yourself. You choose to obviate or negate that responsibility, that's on you, it's not on me. I'll do whatever I can to help you. The operative phrase, and I always like to use on this particular one, I want you to write this down and remember it for the rest of your real estate career, because this may save you from being sued into oblivion. Be the source of the source. Never be the source of information. What do I mean by that?
If they want statistics of an area, you could tell them, use Google to find that out, but don't tell them specifics.
You know a person.
Right.
You know a person.
You know, a person, right? So, even when it comes to contracts, I've probably read 10,000 purchase and sale, no joke. I could probably tell you what every paragraph is and the standard paragraphs and so on and so forth. I can probably, not patting myself on the back, but I can probably explain it better than most attorneys can. But is it my job to explain a purchase and sale to a buyer or a seller? Absolutely not. Why? Because it's a legal binding document. And I'm not here to I can't give legal advice. So my response is going to be, I see something in this paragraph that doesn't pass the sniff test. Please have your attorney look at it. Okay. Here's the other one. Here's the big one that you'll get over the course of your career, at least a couple times. Where's the lot line on this property?
Mm.
Or can I put a pool in the backyard? You can, but you might get your ass sued off. So here's the issue, right? The big one is can I put a pool in the backyard? Your response is, even if you know it firsthand, your response is, you know what? Why don't we ask somebody that knows more? One, let's ask the seller, have they ever explored that option? Number two, I'd recommend, Jessica, that you go to the town hall and speak to the building department and ask them what the regulations are in terms of building a pool. What are the setbacks and does this property meet it?
Even like the condition, like wetlands, who knows if there's
Okay.
soil or whatever.
And you know what your buyer's gonna say is, well, why, you work for me, why don't you go do that? And your response is gonna be what? Because that will happen to you, I guarantee it will happen, whether it's a lot line or a pool or, right? What's your response? Yes, I will, no, I won't. Yes, I will because, no, I won't because.
You can't,
I can't what?
you
Yep.
can't do that.
Oh, I've seen plenty of agents do it.
They shouldn't.
That's a different issue, right? Why shouldn't they? You're right.
You're saying an agent shouldn't go down to the town hall and speak at the building? Or say, yes, you can, yes, you can.
So what I'm saying is, Jessica, I say to Jessica, you know, I'm gonna direct you to town hall and go speak to the building department, and her response is gonna be, wait a second. I work full time, I'm down in Boston all day, I don't have time to sit here and come to the building inspector. Eric, you're my buyer's agent, you work for me, please go do that for me, or you go do that for me, I certainly had it demanded of me. And my response is what? Knowing that you need to be the source of the source and not the source of the information. Why wouldn't you want to be the source of that information? You be the good doobie and provide great customer service and say, yeah, Jessica, I'll go down to town and I'll ask that.
You know, your word.
Is it possible
misrepresent
you're,
what they say or
Right.
something like
is
that.
it possible that you misinterpret, misunderstand, miscommunicate something that was told to you? And who's going to be held responsible?
You are.
What happens when that guy starts putting the pool and the building inspector comes by and goes, you can't put a pool
You're
here
gonna get sued.
Yeah. for a lot of money.
What was that?
How would you word that?
How would I word what?
How would you word that to, the person asking you to
Yeah,
go and
source.
look at?
Well, as I mentioned to you, my job is to help you find and buy real estate, right?
Yeah.
And while I may know a lot of the right questions to ask the building inspector, you need to hear it directly from the horse's mouth.
Okay.
Because it's possible, as long as I've been doing this and as many times I've asked these questions, it is possible for me to misunderstand something and miscommunicate something. And I don't want you making a decision based on something I told you that you determine as being fact, and then somehow I was wrong, because unfortunately, I've been wrong before.
Yeah.
So here's what I would like to do. I'm happy to go with you and make sure that you ask all of the right questions and that you hear it directly from the town. If you can't physically make it, how about we set up a call, which I'm happy to participate on, right? Don't misconstrue customer service, you know, great customer service for doing something because somebody asked you to do it. Just because they ask you to do it and you do it doesn't mean it's great customer service.
Right.
You have to manage those expectations. Okay, so being the source of the source is always better. Go talk to your attorney, go talk to the building department, go talk to whomever the expert is. Don't know where the lot line is? Perhaps you should consider hiring a surveyor to do that work. Okay? Now, the great news is that you can jump online, particularly in Massachusetts, more so than elsewhere. You can jump online and look at the GIS maps, and they're pretty darn accurate. But it's not me saying where the lot line is. Go look on the GIS map, and that'll give you an approximation, a pretty good approximation, given the technology, how good the technology is. Make sense?
Yes.
Be the source of the source, never be the source of information. Okay? It will literally save you hundreds of $1,000s, if not millions of dollars over the course of your career. And you may never know that it does, and if you don't, that's okay. If you never get sued, what's wrong with that?
I had someone say this similar situation.
Yep.
Asking that I make sure that it has good schools and low crime. And I said that I wouldn't be able to provide that information, but because I wouldn't legally be able to do that, but that they could look that up
Okay.
for the area. What I wasn't sure about is could I say, I know of this website that rates schools. I know of this website called whatever that rates crime. I wasn't sure, so I didn't say it, but I know in the future if I could.
You could certainly direct them to a source, but I would probably couch the response by saying, here's one of, I'm sure, many sources. I just happen to be familiar with this particular one, but it's really up to you to decide that. Let me ask you the more important question. I'm going to ask all of you right now. I'm going to ask the one question. I'm just going to point to you and tell me what your answer is. Luciano, what does a good school mean to you?
Good teachers.
Good curriculum.
I can't answer that question.
Why not? I just asked you. What does it mean when you tell me you're looking for good schools? What does that mean?
It's not a trick question. This isn't
It's not a trick question.
you're allowed to answer this.
Answer it however you want.
You're not asking me this in like a role play.
Well, I am, but what do you think a good school is? Just answer,
Good test scores.
okay? What kind of test scores?
SATs.
What kind of curriculum?
I don't know.
Okay. What's a good school to you?
Teachers and test scores,
Okay. What about teachers? That they have them or don't have them?
that they are, very able to teach the kids information so they retain it,
Okay.
and that they are passionate about it.
And how is that measured?
Sometimes people sit in on the classroom or the test scores.
Which test scores?
Like you was saying, SATs to get into college.
Okay. What about MCAS scores?
I think
What about grade level average scores?
all of those things are
Okay. Madison, what makes a good school for you?
I think very similar, like teachers that have a reputation of really caring for their students and getting them to where they want to be.
Okay. How do you measure reputation?
I think reputation is also based on test scores. Anything that's like documented.
Okay, so document. Okay, Julie, I believe you have a child?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so what did good schools mean to you? And then I'm going to answer the question as a father, so.
Okay. They mean usually good schools come with like a more expensive place to live, I guess, the more expensive towns. It's like,
Maybe.
the teachers, their ratings for the schools usually, there's a whole slew of things, but at the end, it's like, where are the kids going to college? What's the graduation rate? And what colleges, I guess, are they going to? Are they going to like sending people to Ivy League schools? Are they sending, no one's going anywhere. It's a community college. Not that there's anything wrong with community college, but.
Right, so as I.
One more thing to add.
Yep.
Safety.
Okay, so what does safety mean?
I don't know.
If it has a metal detector, does that mean it's safe?
I don't know the area. I don't know.
Okay,
Just thought.
so for me and for my wife at the time, it was the student-teacher ratio. Okay, among other things. And so the point of this exercise was to show to you that everybody has a different interpretation of what that is.
Yeah.
So when somebody asks you that question, you have to kind of push back and say, well, I don't know what that means. Help me understand what you're looking for, and I'll try to help you find a source for it. The only source that I'm familiar with is great schools or this or whatever it is, right? There was a debate 10 or 15 years ago, Julie, for example, so in 2000, whenever my kids were in third grade, and my kids are most of your ages, okay, at 24. And when they were in third grade, we showed up to the school to see the list of who was in their class, and we got a little surprise. This is in North Andover. We got a little surprise that there were 35 kids in their classroom. And what we learned as my wife and I started peeling back the layers of the onion is that the town didn't really let it be known that they were having significant budget issues. This is back in the early 2000s. That hit the papers within 2 days. That hit the papers. Ask Lily. We had 3 or 4 deals in North Andover evaporate. Literally, buyers walked away from the deals because of the negative news of this budget issue. I, along with my wife and some others, started a nonprofit, and we got into this whole thing about the school reporting. And I can remember sitting at town meeting Ted Tripp, look him up one day in North Andover. He's a trip. And he at the time, although Julie, I think you said it, you said, listen, there's a correlation between the real estate, the quality of the real estate and the quality of the schools. 10, 15 years ago, that was an odd concept. And I can remember Ted Tripp getting up in the middle of a town meeting in front of 500 or 600 people saying, real estate values are not tied to the performance of the schools. They absolutely are.
100%.
And if you don't believe me, go look at the real estate values of
I
Lexington.
was gonna say Lexington.
Go look at the real estate values of Winchester. Some of the top schools as rated by MCAS, SAT scores, graduation rates, so on and so forth. So is it your job to qualify what they're looking for and find them a source? If you can, great. If not, you got to push them back to go do their own due diligence. But that's a perfect example of why you never want to be the source of information, because Lillian used to come to me and say, Eric, tell them about your experience in North Andover. And I would say this to buyers and say, you guys have to decide what you want, because ultimately for my wife and I was in real estate. We contemplated the follow. Do we pull them out of North Andover and put them in private school? Which private school do we put them in? Do we put them in, St. Augustine's, or do we put them in St. Mike's, or do we put them in Pike or some other school, right? At the time, I think the Catholic schools at the time were, $5 or $8 grand per child per year, right? Think about if your kids are in high school, you go to Brooks or Phillips right now, those tuitions are $45,000 or $50,000 a year per student. Okay, so the other contemplation is, do we pick up and sell our house in North Andover and go to Andover? Because at the time that was the perception, that Andover's was so far superior because of it. Well, even though I'm in the business, there's still a cost to me to do that, right? I'm gonna have to pay at least a buyer agent a fee on the sale of my house. I gotta go through the trouble of finding a house. If there's differential between the values of the house, I gotta suck that up one way or the other. And then I gotta pay probably 8 or 10 grand to have a mover pick up my house and move it for me. Is it all worth it to me in all this grand scheme of things? And the answer that my wife and I came to was no. We chose to be more involved. That was our choice. There was a lot of parents that think the school system is, the local babysitter. So again, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent, but it's a very relevant topic here, because you're going to be looked at as having to be responsible for answering all these questions, and you can't be the source.
My boyfriend does mortgages, and every time he's at an open house, the only thing people talk about is school systems. That's all they talk about the whole time.
Yep. All right, so we talked about F, who's up. So back to you, Julie. G.
The buyer agrees that broker shall have no duty to disclose any matter or condition outside the boundaries of the real property being considered for purchase, including but not limited to present conditions and anticipated changes in neighborhood where the property is located.
What do you think that's related to? And what does that mean?
I would say it's related to the fact that, say, like they're going to start building over here and you don't really know that until after, and they buy the house and then that's built. Like, it's their due diligence to figure out what's around the property. You're just concerned with the specific property and the house itself and the structure. But you're also not an inspector. So I feel like this reiterates the same thing that's in this the disclosure, like right at the beginning, for those first couple sentences that says, like, I'm an agent and licensee and here's what I can do. When you need an expert, you need a lawyer, you need an inspector, you need all of these things.
Mm-hmm. So I would agree with all of that, but here's the pragmatic, practical approach I give you. Again, I give you examples of my experience just to share with you because it's relevant. You may never have them, that's okay, but I think from a learning perspective. So I had a longtime client of mine that I bought and sold helped them buy and sell a number of houses. They split, and I worked with both to find their respective new homes. One of them was looking, if you are familiar with North Andover, if you go up 125, if you drive by Butcher Boy on the left-hand side, there's a large parcel of land that now has apartments on it, and a large parcel in front of those apartments that is being developed into a 45,000 square foot of retail space by which the company you happen to work for is listing, okay, for rent, for lease. So that property has been owned by Lillian and Bob and their partners since 2000, okay? So 5 or 6 years ago, when I was working along with this person, the house, so that there's now a light there, it didn't exist there before. The light at the corner of Barker Street and 125, the first house in French Farm, which was the neighborhood right there, came up for sale, and it had everything right about it for my client. I walked my client through, and she said, I love it. And I knew one of the things that was important to her was that even though it was close to 125, the fact that there wasn't a light, there wasn't a lot of activity was okay for her. And I looked her square in the eye and said, okay, I don't normally do this, but I need you to be aware. And if you want more information, I can get you some, but I'm going to direct you to the town. That property across the street is owned by my owners. I have firsthand personal knowledge of what's going to go there. On the docket right now are apartments and retail. There's going to be a light that is right at the corner of where you're living. So you're going to have traffic stopping and going all night long. With the retail, 45,000 square feet of retail, that's like a shopping mall. So there's going to be a lot of traffic there. I want you to know that, because if that's going to impact your decision, I'd rather have you hear it from me. Because if I never told her that, and she bought that house, and then she found out about that, and it caused her pain, which it would have, she would have come back and said, you should have told me. And I would not have had much of a leg to stand on. I could have said to you, you signed this, and it told you I can't tell you about what's going on. But the fact that the people I work for own the damn property, and I had firsthand knowledge, if I didn't do it, what do you think the judge would say if I got up there and said, well, the contract says, he's going to say, wait a second, you've known since 2000 that your owner of your company owns that property? I don't think the judge is going to see that as all being so favorable. So you have to be somewhat pragmatic. It also has to do with, is that neighborhood safe? I think you brought that up. I don't know what safe means. What's your definition of safe? Let me direct you to the police department. They can pull you all the crime statistics on all the streets in all the town. Okay? Madison, next one. Just we're running tight on time. H.
Okay. Buyer understands it is the buyer's personal responsibility to investigate particular matters which may be of importance, including but not limited to neighborhood composition, the level of crime, presence of sex offenders, property building boundaries and zoning, etc. Buyer also understands that this agreement does not relieve buyer of the duty to exercise due diligence for buyer's own protection, including the duty to investigate any information of importance to the buyer.
So what does that say in short? What does that tell you?
I think it has to do with exactly what we were talking about before, that there's information that if I go to someone and get the information and then I go to you, it's kind of considered like hearsay, sort of like you have to go to the person itself for information about all of these things that they listed.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, if they buy the house and like the next day, their house is broken into and they say, well, you said it was safe, like that's gonna be.
Yeah, they're gonna sue you.
Yeah.
Right?
You just had said that buy the house, it's a safe area.
So I actually was working with a buyer client. Both of them were attorneys. The husband and wife were attorneys, and they handed me the contract as all attorneys do, and they've got all kinds of things struck. Of which I expect you to address, but when it gets to a point of being overly complicated, let me know and I will jump in during your careers. But they struck that very clause. And I said to them, why would you strike that particular clause? And their response was as follows: it's not my job to go figure that out. If there's something going on around there, Eric, you need to tell me. And my response was, you have two choices. I'm not striking the language, but let me tell you that. So I'm not striking the language, so you can either decide to hire me with the language in there, or you can decide not to hire me. Either answer is okay. But let me explain to you why I will not allow that to be struck. Because you're now placing on me an undue burden to go out and do this research that I am not qualified to do. I am not qualified to go figure out whether there's a sex offender in that condominium complex you want to buy a unit in. Not my job, because what's going to happen, here's what's potentially going to happen. I get it right, and I persuade you from not going there because there's a sex offender there. That sex offender learns that I've done that. I get sued for defamation of character and everything else because I did something against him. Alternatively, I go look at the sex offender registry of deeds registry today. There's nothing in the registry today, but between when you make an offer and when you close, somebody moves in there. God forbid something happens to a child or anything else, some unspeakable event. Who are they coming after? Because I told them there was no sex offender. They're coming after me, and they're going to sue me blind.
Did they work with you?
They did,
Did you explain it wrong?
because I explained it. And I said to them, would you, if this were reversed and you were me and this was your contract, would you strike it? Well, of course not. Then why are you striking it? Okay. Just because they have Esquire after their name does not mean that they're more intelligent than you are. Okay. And you will find that very clearly as you deal with attorneys. I'll just leave it at that. But that is the quintessential example of why you do not want to get involved in those types of things. You know what? Go talk to the police department. I've heard that there are websites that get you the information way beyond my pay grade. Okay? Jessica, next.
Buyer represents that buyer is not subject to any earlier agency agreement with any other broker or in a protection period. Buyer will also pay for all out-of-pocket expenses authorized by buyer, including inspections, surveys, appraisals, title searches, engineering studies, soil and water tests, etc.
Okay, what is
So it's just basically saying, you're gonna be paying for all the testing on the property that needs to be done, you know, if they wanna build a pool or get it appraised.
Mhm. Okay.
And then the earlier agent agreement, on fire. Earlier agency agreement.
So you're just validating and you're putting in writing the fact that haven't signed one of these with somebody else that's current or active. Okay, so do you get why I spend so much time on this particular paragraph?
Yeah.
The buyer, it's a partnership. You have obligations to yourself and to this contract, and I have obligations to you and this contract. Okay. This paragraph is the one that gets glossed over 9 times out of 10. Do not gloss over it. Okay? It's better to work with an educated buyer who asks you 10,000 questions than an uneducated buyer who assumes you're doing everything for them. Okay? And as much as you want to get this signed and sealed in the next 10 minutes, explain it and make sure they understand it. Okay? Jumping down to paragraph 4, it says buyer acknowledges and agrees that the broker, Jonathan hit it, A,
Will assist in locating properties, arrange showings, give advice concerning real estate practices and procedures, assist in negotiations, arrange inspections, request by buyer, and coordinate activities throughout the process. May show property in which buyer is interested to other prospective buyers.
so there's reference number 1 that I'm working with other buyers, right? And even though it's an exclusive, the exclusive doesn't bar me from not working exclusively with my other buyers who may also be in the same price range, same town. The operative thing there is a little bit of a misnomer is that you're going to arrange all the inspections. It is much preferred and it's now common practice that the buyers do everything for themselves. Again, it's the liability issue. So just make sure that, you know, yeah, I can help you set it up, but the way that I'm going to help you set it up is you're going to contact the home inspector, if that's the inspection or whomever you're going to do, and you're going to let me know and I'll coordinate it with the listing agent. That's what we mean by setting up the inspections.
So they choose the inspector, but we help them.
Correct.
coordinate it.
Okay.
And can we can still refer, right? Because we had someone come in that we do a lot of work with for inspections. We can suggest them.
You can recommend a home inspector to buyer clients only. You cannot recommend a home inspector, a specific home inspector, to buyer customers. You can recommend a home inspector if one needed to a seller client. You cannot recommend a home inspector to a seller customer. There has to be a client contractual relationship in order for you to be able to recommend a home inspector.
And then
Yeah.
the test, I thought that, it said you're never allowed to recommend an inspector if you're a dual agent or a seller's agent.
So,
I think you're supposed to
I
do,
could
I
be
think
wrong.
you're supposed to, you're supposed to give them
A
a list of
list of
three or more, you can't
Yeah.
give them just one.
right, so the law says I can't recommend it to a customer's, somebody who's not a client.
Okay.
Okay, and if you heard what I said you can recommend it to a buyer client, not a buyer customer. You can recommend it to a seller client, not a seller customer. Okay, and how could why would I recommend it to a seller client? Because they've hired me through an exclusive right to list agreement and they want to do a pre-listing home inspection. Okay, there was a time in a raging buyer's market, which at some point you guys will see in your career if you're in it long enough, that you're going to be recommending to your sellers that they do pre-listing home inspections so that there's no issues or you lessen the likelihood of additional negotiations as a result of home inspection.
Not grand is doing that.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, they're gonna have to go through just to make sure that there's nothing going on.
It's rare in a seller's market to do that on a higher end property where there's less demand. It's a great idea. Okay. Where were we? You were A. B, Mariah?
It is not an expert with regard to matters which could be revealed through a survey, title search, or inspection of the property. The condition of the property, any portion thereof, or any item therein, building products and construction techniques, the necessity or cost of any repairs to the property, hazardous or toxic materials, termites, and other wood destroying organisms, the tax and the legal consequences of a real estate transaction, the ability and cost of utilities and community amenities, the appraised future legal consequences of a real estate transaction, the
appraised or
Sorry.
future value of the property, conditions existing off the property that may affect the property, and the uses and zoning of the property, and matters related to financing. And if these matters are of concern to the buyer is provided advice to seek independent expert advice. So basically, it's the reiteration of what we said earlier, which is, I'm a real estate agent, I'm not an inspector, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a tax advisor, and I don't play one on TV. Okay, so just plain and simple, I'm a real estate guy. We'll get you to the right people if you need those questions asked. But as I said to you earlier in the earlier paragraph, it's on you to do that. I'm here to try and help you be the source of source. I'm going to be a source of the sources, but I'm not going to be a source of the information. Okay. Have I seen 1,000 home inspections? I sure have, but I better not be walking in that home inspection saying, oh, well, look at that. That's wrong, and this is wrong, and that's wrong. Or, hey, we've done a couple hundred new construction. I've done a couple hundred new construction homes. That construction doesn't look so good to me. I'm not a builder. I'm not a licensed builder. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Okay? It doesn't stop you from saying, well, that doesn't look right. Let's ask somebody that knows more than me, that is an expert in that particular field. Okay? C, Luciano.
Shall owe no duties to buyer nor have any authority on behalf of buyer other than what is set forth in this agreement.
What do you think that refers to? So we have a fiduciary duty to the buyer, right? Which is created when they sign this. But what do they mean that we don't have authority on behalf of the buyer? What do you think that means?
Basically means that we can't just make decisions for them. We have to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What else? When you hear the words authority on behalf of somebody, what do you think of?
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney. Okay, and what is power of attorney?
You can make decisions on behalf of someone else.
Okay, with,
What's the other one that's similar to power? Attorney in fact.
With their consent.
With their,
with their consent, with their express written consent,
Written,
right?
yeah.
Not implied. So in other words, you can't sit there, and it happens all the time. You can't sit there and say, I hear all the time with listing agents, oh, my seller will never accept that. Really? Why don't you try asking your seller? You're not here to make a decision for your seller.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have power of attorney? No? Okay. Or you get people that say, I do have power of attorney to do this. You'll talk to buyers or sellers in particular. They say they're signing the document. Okay, well, your name's not on the deed. Well, I have power of attorney. Okay, great. Power of attorney is a written formal document that is signed by somebody giving their authority to sign on their behalf to somebody else. And that document not only needs to be signed by the person granting that authority to the other person, it needs to be notarized. If that document doesn't exist, they do not have power of attorney. I don't care what they say, whether they stand on their head, hold their breath, whatever it is, okay? Rule number 2 that I want you to make sure you never do in your long real estate careers is that you never, ever, 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 ever are a power of attorney for a client, ever. It's a conflict of interest. Why? Think of it like this. Your seller gives you power of attorney to do the closing for them. You're now in a position to make financial and other decisions on their behalf, which immediately does what? Impacts the financial response that you get from that transaction. You're at the closing and there was a major issue with the walkthrough and you make a concession on behalf of the sellers, one way or the other, and the seller doesn't agree with it, you're gonna get sued. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay? D, where are we? Julie, back to you, D. 4D.
May make all disclosures required by law.
Which are what? You as the broker.
Any latent defects
Yep, and
anything else that's disclosed by the seller.
that
Like-
you have firsthand personal knowledge of, and little substance used before 1978.
Lead paint.
Lead paint, because that is a federally and state required law that you disclose what you know or about the law.
Mhm.
Okay? E, Madison.
Okay. Shall under no circumstances have any liability greater than the amount of real estate commission paid hereunder to broker, excluding any commission amount retained by the listing broker, if any.
What does that mean?
I would assume it's saying that the commission rate that you agree on is all that you're going to be getting. You're not under no circumstances have any liability greater to that.
Okay. Will that hold up in a court of law?
Yeah.
I think it will. I've never tested it. I don't want to test it. But I also know that if you do something malicious, fraudulent, misrepresent something, even if it's by accident, you're probably going to be on the hook for well beyond that. We'll use it as a stopgap in our defense, but if you've done something and misrepresented something knowingly or unknowingly, and you get called to the carpet on it and it gets proven that you did that, this isn't going to stop them from suing you for more than that. Okay, because they'll start going after you under 93A, which is the Consumer Protection Act in the state of Massachusetts. Okay? What else did I want to say about that? The only other thing I want to say in there, that subparagraph E started with the word shall. Why is that an important legal term?
Future, not present? I mean, future, not past?
Yeah, sure. What else? I don't disagree with that. Not the answer I'm looking for, but I don't disagree with that. Mariah, any?
I would say maybe to, I don't know how to word it, shall, like, in case there's other ways of doing things. You know what I mean? Like I can't word it, I'm sorry.
Okay. Who wants to help her? Because it's not in,
Actions.
it does. Is there a difference between the word shall and will and maybe and kind of sort of and?
It's definite.
It's unequivocal, right? So when the word shall it's a legal term that's purposefully used to ensure that something will unequivocally happen, right? So you will see it used in legal binding contracts. So when it says shall, under no circumstances, have any liability, we're saying unequivocally there's no liability. Now again, I just told you that that may or may not be the case, but we word this, we had our attorneys word this to do what? Protect us to the best degree possible. But you'll see things in contracts like the buyer shall do this or the seller shall do that. It's not a matter of if they'll do it, maybe they'll do it, it's they are required to do it. So it's an unequivocal description of action. Okay, little legalese there that most of your contemporaries don't know or understand. So if you're in a contract and it says shall do this, there is no question it has to be done. And somebody not doing it is actually breaking the contract. Okay, so unfortunately I have to cut our session a little bit short today. So here's what I'd like to do. So we're on, Madison, we're on for next week. Tuesday, 2 to 4, Wednesday, 2 to 4, Friday, 1 to 3. I will send out an invitation. It may be over the weekend if I don't get to it now. What I'd like each of you to do is be prepared to describe paragraph 6, which we haven't gone over yet, to me as if I'm the buyer, because I want you to really focus in on this paragraph. The rest of this is stuff we already know and we're going to talk a little bit more about, but that's the most uncomfortable paragraph for everybody to describe. So I want you to read it a couple dozen times over the weekend. I want you to get comfortable with it over the weekend, and I want you to be able to describe it to me in basically 3 to 5 minutes. And you're each going to get a shot to do that, and then we're going to talk it through. Okay, you've heard me say it a couple times, but I find this is the best way for you to get over the hesitation or the angst of dealing with this paragraph, because it's the money paragraph. Any questions? Julie, any questions?
No.
Madison?
No.
Jessica?
No.
Jonathan?
Nope.
Mariah? Luciano?
Yep.
What's your question?
I just want to say,
Okay.
yes,
Or why? You misrepresented that you had a question and you didn't.
Did I?
I don't know, did you?
I just asked a question, so I guess I did.
I asked, you should. If you have a question.
I shall not have a
You
question.
shall not have a question. Thank you. Hope this was helpful.
It was. It's a lot of words. So when I've read this like more than one, a couple of times, and it just feels like it goes from one ear and out the other.
I feel that way and I've been doing it for 20 years.
I actually have a question. I missed.
Thank you.
You have a question?
Yes, I may have missed this, and I apologize if I did in the beginning. The last session we had Eric, you went over this, and we were able to have it for the Massachusetts mandatory real estate licensee. You went over this, and we were able to take it as the way that you explained it and learn from it. Did you explain the exclusive right to buy agreement?
Nope, because what I want to do is just like the Massachusetts Mandatory Real Estate Licensee Consumer Relationship Disclosure Form, we went through the components of it. Then I came back and said, here's how I describe it in that 5 or 10 minute session. I'm going to do the same thing, but I want to get through this. I'm taking the payment paragraph 6 out of context because it's so important for you to be able to get comfortable with it sooner rather than later. I'm forcing you, without the benefit of a detailed explanation about it, to try and fumble through with me so that we can pick it apart and you can get through that nervousness now, if that's okay. And if
Okay,
not,
that
then cut class on Monday and
I'm definitely not gonna announce in the Monday meeting that I know this. I'm just kidding.
no
That was
worries.
good for me.